Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very unusual meeting of Astronomy Ireland. What we're here to do today, I hope, is to tell you a little bit about what happened in Astronomy Ireland in the last 25 years. Don't worry, it's not a 25-year history lecture, just some of the highlights. And then what we're planning or hoping to do, hopefully with your support, in the next 25 years. And we're also recording this talk because we expect to get lots more volunteers who'll come along, no doubt, in dribs and drabs. And we'll be able to show them this video because I've spent the last year that we've been sort of thinking about this, explaining to various of you, some of you are here, the kind of plans that we have for Astronomy Ireland. So we thought we can record it all and then get some other people's ideas and then start a few committees going, or a few people working on their own. We can take what's become the biggest astronomy society in the world to a whole new level. And I think it has a very interesting future. It will be 25 years old on the 1st of August. So here we are in the middle of February, planning well in advance. And I was hoping it wouldn't do that. I thought plugging it into the mains would stop it doing that. Well, I'll just keep pressing the button every now and then. So the first thing I want to do, I want to tell you a couple of stories. I want to tell you what Neil Armstrong told me. An Irishman, by the way. He told me that, so I know it's true. I want to also tell you what we found out in Sir Patrick Moore's house. I also want to tell you how we taught Stephen Hawking a bit of Irish. So he has a cúpla focal in that machine of his. And lots of other amazing stories from the past 25 years. When we've finished all that, then we'll talk a bit about the future. It was 2003, I think, when Neil Armstrong was in town giving a public lecture. Gay Byrne was interviewing him in the National Concert Hall, and the organisers asked us to help promote the event, in return for which we got to interview Neil Armstrong one-on-one, which was an enormous pleasure and privilege. Thinking Armstrong, I thought, well, it's not O. Armstrong, there's probably no Irish ancestry, but you had to ask. This is before, I think, Obama had revealed how Irish he was. And it turned out, he told me that they had traced the family lineage, and that the family Armstrong had actually come from County Fermanagh. And then he laughed and said, of course, they were famous for cattle rustling. He sniggered. And he basically told us that the first man on the moon is descended from ancient Irish cattle rustlers. We went to Patrick Moore's house about 4 years later in 2007, because Sir Patrick had given several talks to the Society in the 90s. In the noughties, his health declined, he wasn't really able to travel. And he gave some superb talks, packed out, as you can imagine. We got him on television, radio and the like. And during the boom we had great grants, something I'm going to mention later on. And we were able to bring in lots of speakers. So we invited everybody that we could think of in the UK and further afield, and lots of them accepted the offer. We had BBC's rock star astronomer, Professor Brian Cox. He'd just become a professor in 2008, and he spoke in this very room. To a packed auditorium. There were actually people queuing at the door. The seats were all full, so were the stairs, so was the front here, and people standing out looking over other people's heads. That's how popular he was. We had the Astronomer Royal of Scotland in here pulling rabbits out of hats and talking about black holes. And so we had lots of the heads of departments from the universities and the research institutes, Jodrell Bank, Greenwich, Royal Greenwich Observatory, you name it, we invited them, and most of them accepted. And we, in 2007, Sir Patrick Moore, Brian May from the band Queen, and Chris Lintott, who still presents the BBC Sky at Night show, wrote a book together called Bang. And Chris Lintott came over to Dublin to give a talk. Patrick couldn't travel at the time. And he kindly invited us over to the filming of the 50th anniversary of the Sky at Night. There's a few of us in this room who were there in Patrick Moore's house on the south coast of England in 2007 as the BBC filmed the 50th anniversary episode of the Sky at Night. And you'll see a few of us in the background if you ever watch those old recordings. And there were lots of people there. It was filmed over 2 days. Brian May himself was there. Lots of other celebrities as well. MPs, actors, cheeky girls I seem to remember, Mylene Klass, people like that. And lots of these researchers who we had met before when we brought them to Ireland to give talks. And so we were able to renew the acquaintance and say, of course, the reason you're here is over the last 50 years as head of the institute in Cambridge or whatever, you've been on the Sky at Night loads of times. And almost to a man or woman, they said the same thing to me, which really changed my mind about what astronomy societies are. And that's, yeah, I've been on the show quite a few times, but that's not the real reason I'm here. The real reason is, when I was a kid, and some of these people are now retirement age, because Patrick will be over 90 years old today, I wrote to Patrick, and he kindly wrote back, and that kept up my interest. And it dawned on me that it wasn't just the 50-year television show that he'd run, it wasn't the hundreds odd books that he'd written, it was all the young people that he had inspired to go on to a career in astronomy, probably the sciences as well, and all the research that have worked for them, and all the students that they've trained. The number of people that Patrick Moore's interest in astronomy effectively touched and kept interested in science and technology is colossal. I don't know if we could put a number on it, it'd be an interesting exercise to try, but he must be responsible for millions or perhaps even billions of contribution towards the UK's national economy. And I thought, when Astronomy Society gets quite large and things like that start to happen, that's really the kind of organisation you become, or indeed should become. And it happened to us as well. We're in this very room because Professor Peter Gallagher was a young member of Astronomy Ireland. He used to come to our lectures when they weren't being held in Trinity College. His mother told me this. She used to drop him in and collect them. And he's now head of the astrophysics department here in Trinity College. And he invited us to use this hall as a city central location. We were based a little bit over on the north side of the city before this. So it's an ideal facility, and it's come back to help us in the future. There are researchers I know in Galway and Maynooth and the other universities who are all involved with Astronomy Ireland when they were young as well. There was one particular chap, I remember he wrote to us, it might have been his mother that wrote to us. He was 12 years of age, based in Sligo, and they'd gotten one of the cheap telescopes that we tried to put people off buying for astronomy. And they wondered why they couldn't see anything with it. And we explained that, well, it's one of those telescopes that's very poorly made. You're never going to see the detail in the planets at high magnification. It just can't do that. But if you get a low magnification eyepiece, you will see some of the deep sky objects. Really, you would have been better off with a pair of binoculars. And they bought an eyepiece from us at the time and wrote back a lovely letter a few months later saying, the eyepiece works great. We've been able to see the Pleiades star cluster, the Andromeda galaxy, the Orion nebula. And we thought, that's great. I think we even published that letter in the magazine at the time. About 10 or 12 years passed by, and Stephen Hawking came to Dublin to give a talk at a big conference of all the general relativity theorists in the world. They call it GR, and then the number 17, in this case their 17th conference. The previous year they'd been in Hawaii, and this year they wanted to come to Dublin because Dublin was buzzing during the noughties and see what it was like. Hawking thought he had solved the thing with black holes called the information paradox, and he asked, after the closing date for papers, could he come along and present a paper on this at the GR17 conference in Dublin. One of the local organising committee, which is led by Professor Petros Florides, another professor from Trinity College here in the maths department, a good friend of Astronomy Ireland as well. He's given us talks in the past. He asked some of the people who were presenting papers, and one of them agreed to step aside and give a slot to Stephen Hawking. Once it was announced Hawking was coming to Dublin to present this paper, the world's media went crazy. BBC Horizon programme were there, National Geographic, all the Irish media, lots of the BBC and British media. Newsnight even did a piece from Dublin on the whole thing. He presented his paper full of mathematics at a professional conference that went completely over my head. I hadn't got a clue what he was talking about. And I was glad to see on the news, I was interviewed for TV3 News and basically said no idea what it was about. It was great to have him in Dublin presenting such an important paper. And one of the professors from a university around the world, I've forgotten where it was, basically was asked what he thought of the theory, and he basically said, well, we have to wait till we get back to our offices and go through the fine detail and see if it stands up to scrutiny. In other words, he didn't understand it either. It actually transpired he hadn't solved the information paradox. But the interesting part of the story from Astronomy Ireland's point of view is I got up on stage to get a picture taken with Stephen Hawking like you do, and a young chap tapped me on the shoulder and said, are you David Moore? I said, yes. He said, I'm Oisin Mochanauna. And he says, I'm a student of Stephen's. And I thought, Mochanauna, that sounds a bit Irish. And he says, yeah, I'm a member of Astronomy Ireland. So we went outside and had a chat, and he told me he was that 12-year-old in Sligo. And he'd kept up the interest, gone to Galway University to do a maths degree, decided to do a master's degree over in Cambridge University, which he did, and he was ready to leave there. I think he was off to the city to make his name, his fortune in London. And he saw a notice up on the board in Cambridge where Stephen Hawking is based. Professor Stephen Hawking takes on one PhD student every year. Applications are invited. And he thought, well, just a chance to meet Stephen Hawking and talk maths for an hour or so. Oh, I'm there. And he signed his name on the list. Got the interview. Had a great time talking to Stephen Hawking one-on-one about maths. A few days later in the post, he was offered the PhD, which of course he took. He is now Dr. Oisin Macanana. He's actually come back to Ireland and given us, I think, three public lectures in the past. And I thought, that is the same story that happened in Sir Patrick Moore's house. You know, you're running an astronomy club, you think it's for setting up a few telescopes, having a bit of fun, talking to a few friends, spreading the interest in the subject. But in fact, you can change people's lives. And we didn't do any of that deliberately. We have people, as I said, in Trinity College, in Maynooth, in Galway. There's people in JPL have emailed me saying, I'm now working for NASA. If you're ever over in California, I'll give you a personal guided tour to areas that you don't normally get access. And there are lots of people, I know people in Berkeley, University in the USA. They're all over the place without us knowing. There are people involved in the European Space Agency as well. And we didn't try to do any of that. And that's happened in the last 25 years. And I'll tell you a bit about what other things Astronomy Ireland has done. But I think that is a very important part of what we should do for the next 25 years. Has this been jumping on me? And that's why we've got this slogan, Inspiring the Future. So on top of everything else we're going to do for the members, for people interested in astronomy, we want to have a very deliberate program to try and inspire more Oisin Macananas, more Peter Gallaghers, more people going into not just astrophysics, but also the general sciences and engineering. It's estimated in Ireland about 60% of our GDP is science related. So all these high-tech companies we have that we're trying to attract, they're contributing 60% of our GDP in science and technology related activities. And there's a shortage of young people going into these particular subject areas. So we have a role to play nationally as well, not just inspiring astronomers, but inspiring a whole interest in science. And I find that very exciting. We're hoping to develop that area. We're finding it difficult at the moment because during the boom, this is where the history starts, we had lots of staff, we had lots of grants, money wasn't a problem, and we ran everything with paid employees. That's all, it ended very abruptly. About 50% of our funding was cut in 2008, and the next year all of it was cut, and we've been surviving on fundraising and running the staff levels down to the point now where we're running entirely really on volunteer effort. And over the last year, quite a few people have come along, I see a lot of you here, to help run the society, and we want to put the whole thing in context for you, that, you know, if we're sweeping out the warehouse, we do have a vision, a goal in the future, which is to inspire the future. So that's it takes me back then, just to finish that side of things, to what Neil Armstrong said. Apart from his Irish ancestry, he actually stopped the handlers that he had with him at some point and pointed out to them that he thought that amateur astronomers had a very important role to play. He said there were some of the few amateur scientists who can actually contribute to the sum total of human knowledge. And I think when you have people like Neil Armstrong realizing that, the kind of work that Patrick Moore has done indirectly, and you realize how important science is to the Irish economy. I mean, we all used to think it was agriculture and other things. Agriculture, I think, is less than 10% anyway, and science dwarfs it. And if you ask the average person in the street, what is the Irish economy based on? How many of them are going to say science? Nobody really knows. That's where our bread and butter comes from. And if we're to get access to public money, like we used to, then I think we can play our role in returning the favour by promoting an interest in science in general and astronomy in particular. And we've got Neil Armstrong on our side, Patrick Moore and lots of others as well. So let me tell you a little bit then about the history of Astronomy Ireland, just very briefly. Founded in 1990. There was another group before, I'm not ashamed to admit it because I was the president, called the Irish Astronomical Society. And it grew quite large under the idea of trying to promote interest in astronomy, but it really got a bit too public. And we realized we wanted another group that was going to be purely for the general public. So the emphasis on Astronomy Ireland, and the reason, the secret why it's the biggest astronomy club relative to population anywhere in the world, is that we target all 4.5 million people in the south and the 1.5 in the north. Everybody should be a member of Astronomy Ireland. Everything we do should interest people I think every human being is curious, and if you say you don't have an interest in astronomy, well, we can find some area, like where do you think the universe came from, to pique their interest and get them interested in astronomy. And getting people interested and keeping them interested in astronomy is what the Society has done. There's a huge thirst for it publicly, and I think a lot of other astronomy societies, I mean, we're 10 times bigger than the equivalent groups in the UK, they make the mistake of just catering for people who are already interested. If you're not interested in astronomy, you're the person we want to talk to. And that's the secret. So we started doing that in 1990, so we held a lot of public events, these telescope watches that we run. Sure, a lot of people come to the events. We had 15 branches running them all around Ireland as well. A lot of people went to those. But with the publicity that we get running those, people hearing about it, is 10 or 100 times bigger. There's an eclipse coming up, a very deep partial eclipse on March the 20th. The last time there was a well-seen total eclipse of the moon, for instance, in the evening, with clear skies across the whole country, we reckon about 2 million people in Ireland watched it, based on a rough survey we did afterwards. It wasn't very scientific, but we asked a lot of people, and more than half the people said they went out to look at the eclipse. You know, that's bigger than Ireland in a World Cup. How far do we get? Quarter-final? Or in the rugby. It's bigger than a sporting event. There's that level of interest in Ireland. So we've been doing that since 1990. The club grew. It started off quite small. The first year only about 300 people joined. We thought it would be a lot more than that. But it doubled its membership every 18 months during the 90s. We had a show on the Den with Ray Darcy and Dustin. That ran every month for a few years. We then moved to Live at 3 with Derek Davis and Thelma Mansfield, wasn't it? Yeah. That ran for a year or two. Then RTÉ changed the way they scheduled programmes during the day, and we stopped doing TV. We also launched our magazine on the British newsstands, which took a lot of time and a lot of money. We got some nice grants for that, and it worked quite well for a few years, but the BBC brought out their own magazine. There was already some competing magazines over there, and we retreated back into Ireland since then. In the late 1990s, I think it was 1996, we applied for, well, one of our members, who was politically active, applied for a grant, thing called the Community Employment Scheme. That gave us 15 half-time people from the long-term unemployed pool and a supervisor, full-time supervisor, to administer. It was a FOSS Community Employment Scheme to administer the whole thing. So we had 15 half-time people and one full-time person working for us. That ran for 2 or 3 years. In today's money, there's about €500,000 of public money that was brought into the society, and it meant we didn't really need volunteers. We expanded our branches during that time. We did fantastic publicity. We had lots of big events. That was in the late 1990s. Unfortunately, 75% of the money for CE schemes was EU funded, and it was only EU funded for a certain amount of time, and that 75% was cut, and they cut a lot of the CE schemes, ours included. We had a big campaign at the time to get the funding that we'd been approved for, to actually get it started. And this is another surprise to me, what can happen in an astronomy society. Some of our members are fairly well connected politically. They arranged for me to go in and meet a minister in the Dáil to discuss the particular issue. Our funding came through shortly after that. And also we asked members to write to their TDs to ask why this money wasn't coming online, because we thought we would give people very good office training if they're long-term unemployed, would have definitely employable traits to it afterwards once they left us. And a lot of them did actually get jobs afterwards, and it certainly changed their lives having talked to them one-on-one. So that funding ran out anyway, but then the boom had come, our telescope shop side of things, which was privately really owned by me, although it was marketed through the society. And in return, we donated, over the course of about a decade, €500,000 cash to the society by printing the magazine for free, paying their phone bill, electricity bills, all those kind of bills that the company would have been running anyway, and providing premises for the staff of Astronomy Ireland to work. So that was a symbiotic relationship. Of course, we all know what happened around 2008, 2009. All hell broke loose, public funding was cut. We used to get these nice grants, I said, to bring all these speakers in. That all ended. The sales in the shop dried up a lot as well. We retreated to sort of being run by volunteers again. So the club started out with volunteers during almost a recession in 1990. Saw the Celtic Tiger come in, got lots of grants, then ran sort of semi-commercially, I suppose, for a few years. We're certainly funded by a commercial operation, and now it's back to being run by volunteers. And that's the future that we have for it. We have to run with volunteers. Maybe the economy will change. Grants will be available. There are certain grants from the EU which are difficult to get, but which some of the members want to chase for us. If that comes online, great. There are lots of programs we can do involving going around talking in schools that currently we have to pay some people for and cover the costs. We would be able to do that for free to schools in the future with a program like that. So there are lots of ideas like that. So there's a rough sort of history of Astronomy Ireland and what this society could do. But there's lots of things we want to do in particular that we've been gathering lists of over the last year, and which we might ask for your comments on as well. So I'm going to run through this on this PowerPoint presentation. A lot of them are listed on the website. If you go to astronomy.ie, you look at the 25th anniversary meeting, most of them are there. They're in no particular order on this list because it's a list that's going to grow. We currently do have day trips to the Armagh Planetarium and Observatory. We didn't run one last year, but we normally do every November. Because they'll have a new show each year. It is one of the world's best planetaria, and it's on this island. Now, it's in Northern Ireland, technically. The state doesn't really have a planetarium. There is one in the Inishowen Peninsula in Donegal, and there's another one in Schull in West Cork. I was there in the 1980s when President Hillary opened it. But they're very small operations. There is a big plan fronted by Bono's wife, Pat Kenny's wife, and two heads of universities. I've met them again. They almost had it funded to the tune of 18 million when the crash happened, 2008, and we thought it had gone away forever because 8 million of that 18 million was put up by AIB. We all know what happened to them. But now it's been funded again. And they're hoping there will be a Dublin Planetarium in a couple of years, so we should add Dublin Planetarium trip to that for our members around the country. I should point out, by the way, 70% of our members don't live in Dublin. Most of our members live outside Dublin, so we're always very aware that we should be doing events all around the country. We spelled Burr wrong there, haven't we? Burr Castle has a fantastic science centre. Again, in the 90s, that was Sir Patrick Moore was instrumental in helping to get that going and to see the funding they got. They had £8 million punts at the time in the 90s of funding to build, not just restore the telescope, but to build a fantastic science centre down there. Well worth visiting. I've had meetings with Lord Ross. We've been in his castle, talking one-on-one to him, walking around the grounds, and I've only got to look through the telescope once since it's been rebuilt, but he's open to the idea of people looking through it again. It had some technical issues recently, but the Science Centre in the grounds is an event we certainly should do. If you have any other ideas for day trips, let me have them later on. Trips abroad. These are new trips that we're proposing. I've been over to the Royal Greenwich Observatory and their planetarium there, which was recently refurbished. Turns out their education officer is from Monaghan. The Irish are everywhere. So we can get a very personal tour there, and that could be a day trip over and back in the same day. The Jodrell Bank Radio Telescope, to my shame, I have never visited myself. I'm sure some of you probably already have. They have a fantastic science centre there. CERN, we have Irish people in CERN who have said they will arrange and give us special tours. We just need some of you to organise it. And anyone got any other ideas like that? How about some major trips? We do our trip to Norway every year. It's last one was in November. There's another one coming up October, November this year. We might actually do two different ones, one on land, one in the sea. So they've been quite successful. We've already been taken by the Spanish tourist board to the Canaries and flown around from Tenerife to La Palma to look at the observatories up on top of both of those mountains. And I think some of us in the audience were there as well. They took 6 of us over. We have a travel agent lined up. It has to be done through a bonded travel agent, and the plan is perhaps to go there for a week when you can enjoy yourself in the sun, but also do tours of not just the observatories on both Tenerife and La Palma, where the biggest telescope in the world is based. And if you read the magazine last year, you'd have seen pictures of us posing underneath it. And that is a fantastic trip to take. You know, you can mix your sun holiday with your astronomy holiday, holiday for the entire family. So we're hoping that's going to be very popular. There's a plan, it'll be a lot more expensive to go to the Southern Hemisphere to see the sights of the Southern Hemisphere that most of us haven't seen. I haven't seen them in over 20 years. And if you want to see the Large Magellanic Clouds, the brightest globular star cluster, Omega Centauri, and Alpha Centauri, the nearest naked eye star to the Sun, things like that, just to see the southern skies once in your life. And most of the landmass in the southern hemisphere is not far south like it is here in the northern hemisphere. So you usually only end up just a bit south of the tropics, around 30 to 40 degrees latitude, which means actually the center of the galaxy is overhead as well, Sagittarius. And I remember sitting in a pool in Sydney, looking up at the center of the galaxy overhead with Mars, which from Ireland it was on the horizon, barely visible, but in Australia was overhead. An amazing sight, and that's definitely something for your bucket list to get to the southern hemisphere. There are, as I said, members in NASA who will give us personalized guided tours if we want to organize those. Same goes for the European Space Agency as well, by the way. And there are some other ideas that some people have sent in since about other space science centres that have fantastic exhibits in Europe, which I've never seen and would love to. We even talked to someone from Kazakhstan, where they launch a lot of the missions that go to the International Space Station, and they would be open to organising tours for us as well. We've already held some very spectacular trips. In 1999 we had the deepest eclipse until this one that we've got now, next month on March the 20th, and we found out that Budget Travel, in their brochure for that summer, had a package holiday to Varna in Bulgaria for something like $4.99 or $3.99, and the hotel they were using was right under the eclipse track. They didn't realize it. We quickly booked all the places, and about 70 members went, and the weather was perfect that day, and they got a fantastic view of the eclipse. I didn't go with them on that occasion. We ended up selling too many eclipse glasses back here in Dublin at the last minute. It's a long story. But in 2006 there was a next eclipse nearby, total eclipse of the Sun, and by the way, the last total eclipse of the Sun on Irish soil was the year 1727. The next one is 2090, even though it's only West Kerry and Cork. The next one in Dublin is May the 5th, 2600. So you have to travel if you want to see an eclipse. That's what we did in 2006. It was during the height of the boom. Money was no real object. We signed up with a travel agent, so it was a bonded tour. I think it was $8.99 was the cost for a week in Turkey. There were no scheduled flights. The tourist season hadn't begun in March, so we had to hire our own Airbus A320 worth €60 million, and it cost us $120,000 up front before everyone had paid. But back then, everyone had lots of money, including the society, and we just paid the bill, and we actually made a profit on the whole event. So it worked out very well, and 170 people got to see the eclipse. Again, beautifully clear. The first time I've seen the eclipse, supposed to be the most spectacular sight in nature. And the next chance to get to an easily accessible eclipse is 2017. The eclipse that's coming up next month is over the North Atlantic. The weather conditions are not usually good. Hopefully someone will get to see it, but you don't really want to organise a big event when the chance of clouds are high. So 2017 over the USA, where the weather conditions should be good, is another trip that we should organise. And we should organise it during the 25th anniversary, which goes from August the 1st this year to July 31st next year, because it'll be a year away at that stage, and you can imagine a lot of the accommodation, flights and everything else is going to be well booked up by then. So it could be a fantastic trip, chance once in a lifetime to see a total eclipse, and also a fundraiser for the club. And there are if you have other big ideas like that, we'll organise them as well. We have done so in the past, we will do again. We have quite a few annual events. We want to add a few more to them. So the Kerry Dark Sky Reserve, supposed to be one of the darkest skies in the world, is on this island. The people who measured it for the Dark Sky Association couldn't believe the readings they were getting as to how dark the sky was. We filmed there with TV3 in July of 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago now, gosh. And admittedly it was during July, which is not the ideal time to be filming because the sky can get perfectly dark. But 3 different groups have already approached us with accommodation facilities, lecturing facilities where we could either run an astronomy weekend or even just an astronomy night down there. So I think that's definitely something we have to do while we have one of the darkest skies in the world on this island. We're thinking, since this is the silver anniversary of the Society, of instituting a silver medal to be awarded for some project or topic as yet undecided. I think that would be a good idea. We sometimes occasionally hold a winter solstice event. Newgrange is too booked up. It's now done with a lottery, because in the past they used to have 10-year queues, and when your ticket came up, a lot of people either emigrated or passed away, so they didn't show up. So they started doing it as a lottery. Everyone who goes to visit Newgrange goes into a draw, and if you're lucky you get tickets to see the solstice. So you can't really organise something at Newgrange, it's booked up. But there is a solstice alignment in Sandymount that the Dublin Corporation built, a sort of standing stones lined up with the winter sunrise. I've been there a few times, and I think we should run a public event there every year to promote interest in astronomy. If you've got any other ideas of annual events, let us know. In the short term, we need to start promoting. We're going to ask some of you who are helping the club already to help us promote the eclipse that's coming up on March the 20th. It's a Friday morning, so make sure you book the day off work. You don't want to miss this eclipse. There won't be one this deep till, I think it's 2026. There's the March issue of the magazine has lots more details about that. And also there's going to be a total eclipse of the moon on September 28th. Now, it's 2 a.m. I think it is on September 28th, it's September 27th. But that's a great chance to get people out watching a total eclipse of the moon as well. So we need to do some publicity on those now, as in this week or next week if we can, so we're ready in time, especially if millions of people are going to watch it. The Astronomy Ireland branches, I mentioned that 60 to 70% of our members don't live in Dublin. We had 15 branches in everywhere from Galway, Sligo, Letterkenny, Tralee, Limerick, Cork, lots of places all around the country. They have drifted away over the years because of the lack of funding and the lack of support that we could give them. We need to bring them back. They've written to us, they're ready to go, they're ready to restart holding events. When we do publicity for the watch that we're going to have on March the 3rd in Blanchardstown, our headquarters, it's just as easy to say and Carlow and Galway and whatever, and people who live in those areas can go along to the events that members are running locally. That's 15 branches. There are 32 counties in Ireland. The ideal target, if we could achieve this, we've got 25 years to do it before the next 25th anniversary meeting. If we had a branch in every county around Ireland, that would be fantastic. We want to restart the beginners class in at least the major towns and cities, and we have one member who's in that sort of area of lecturing who's very keen to do this. The economy is picking up, and we need about a dozen people in each venue to make it break even. After that, it's a fundraiser for the society. We had 12 sets of evening classes running at one stage during the boom, all contributing to the society's coffers. But that's a big project. But we've done it before, so we can obviously do it again. Astronomy Ireland then, and education. This is something, the sort of big picture stuff that we'll keep in the back of our minds, that the reason why we're doing all this is to make a difference as well as everything else. I think everybody in the country should know, have it stamped on their forehead or tattooed on their arm, that 60% of the GDP of this country is science-based. Science sometimes gets a bad reputation. In fact, it's paying for a lot of our public services. There should be more astronomy on the school curriculum. The curriculum has been developed recently. I don't know if there's any teachers in the audience, but we have quite a few teachers in the organisation, and we want to work with them to see how better we can promote astronomy as a tool for teaching the sciences. There's a group in the UK called the Association of Astronomy Educators that have a fantastic presentation that shows how you can teach almost anything through astronomy. Now, obviously physics, obviously maths, even maybe obviously a bit of chemistry and the other sciences, but they show how you can teach geography, history, and even religious studies using astronomy. And if you can pique a young person's interest, you don't need to teach them, they will learn automatically. And I think astronomy can play a big role in that. This website we have here, astronomy.ie/study, is a list of all the degree courses in astronomy in Ireland. And when we formed Astronomy Ireland in 1990, one of our goals was to see a degree in astronomy in Ireland. There were none. We had a leaflet on studying astronomy. It said, in a word, emigrate. It listed universities in the UK and in the States that did astronomy degree courses. We did say you could stay in Ireland, do a degree in physics, and then try and do a PhD with a researcher who had interest in that area later on, but that was like a 10-year program. If you wanted a primary degree in astrophysics, you couldn't get one. Galway University, we worked with Professor Mike Redfern over there, launched the first one, gosh, must be 10 years ago now, and there was such a clamour for the course that the points, I think, were higher than medicine for the first year. The other universities saw this and jumped on the bandwagon, and there are degree courses in practically all the universities, I think, except for Limerick, I think. They have an aerospace degree course, though, in Limerick. Which is great to see, and we love to promote that. So we have this website that we're trying to keep up to date. So as any courses come online, that's the one-stop shop for them all. And that helps us to work better with academics, who we need them to give us talks, to help us with astronomy, and to explain to the powers that be that, you know, astronomy is important. It can contribute significantly to your GDP. The advanced evening classes have actually, since we did this slide, been organised. They're running on June the something. It's on the website astronomy.ie, and they're going to be running every year now. We want to set up an intern program. We have this headquarters and office out in Blanchardstown. We need people to staff the office. We only have people for 2 days a week at the moment. That's why we've moved to a mobile phone, so you can take volunteers can pass that around, and we can give out information that way. Also, it means actually that as we seem to move premises every few years, we can't take our landline with us. It keeps changing. We keep losing people as a result, because Google never forgets, and their old numbers are still there out there in the ether. But now the mobile number hopefully will stay permanent as well, a bit like our PO box address, which is our permanent address. So an intern program of having people who want to learn how to run an organisation, to help run an organisation as part of an intern program, I think would be an ideal thing. It's what we did on the community employment scheme before, and people got great jobs as a result. Some of them could even be with Astronomy Ireland. The new workshops that we're proposing to organise are one on astrophotography. You can take pictures with your camera phones these days that are actually very good of the moon and planets, and small cheap cameras can start to do interesting deep sky photography. You don't have to have tens of thousands of equipment, euros worth of equipment. You can actually do it on a budget. A lot of people are asking us for a telescope use workshop. Now they can come along to our telescope events, we can help them after the crowd dies down, but wouldn't it be nice to organise a specific one like that? And you can see how big and active the society would be if we could do all of these things. And there are volunteers, not just in this room, but around the country, that want to do these with us. Of course, our biggest benefit in membership, we put a huge amount of effort into most of the funds of your membership fee, is the magazine. There's only about 1,500 paid up members at the moment. There were 2,200 during the height of the boom. We need to get more of those back online. We're not very good at administration, I have to confess, so we let people lapse too easily and we don't follow them up. And that's something we need to fix. We also need to promote our membership a lot better, because I don't know if it escaped your attention, but this is the membership form of the world's most popular astronomy club. I'm not proud of it, I'm ashamed of it. And I think we can do a lot better than that. So we need some people who are good at designing forms. It's one of the many things we haven't had time to get round to. We want to expand the magazine. We can increase the number of pages. We need someone to sell ads for the magazine. It doesn't carry any advertising. That's a loss of revenue for the society. And it means people aren't buying products that would keep their interest in their hobby. If they invest in their hobby, it'll keep them interested in astronomy. Oh, sorry about that. I forgot my normal notice, which is to turn off your mobile phones. But this isn't one of our public meetings, so we won't worry too much about that. Other ideas for the magazine. We should have, instead of 1,500 paid up subscribers, 15,000. We have 23,000 people on our mailing list, which is free. We should have 230,000. I think by promoting them, there's a lot more people. I talked to 2 people tonight on the phone who were wondering what was happening in the sky. There's probably a third one ringing us now, and they don't know about our mailing list. Yet they're out there watching the sky, looking up Astronomy Ireland and ringing us to find out what it is. There's huge interest in astronomy, still untapped, even in the country where the world's most popular astronomy club hangs out. Astronomy Ireland membership, design new membership form. I think we covered that bit. We want to increase the membership by a factor of 10. It can be done. This actually should have been the first slide, I realised later on. My apologies for this. But you know what we do already. Regular telescope nights for members nationwide. We just started redoing those. The magazine delivered to your door every month. Reduced rates on the evening classes. Reduced rates on the lectures. They're half price now to members. This is part of the initiative for the 25th. That some non-members suggested we weren't charging enough for our lectures. So we've changed that this year. That'll bring in extra funds and enable us to bring in more and more speakers. We need a lot of work done on our website. It's on an ancient server. It's now got so many gigabytes on it that it's going to be very difficult to move, but it needs a complete overhaul, and it needs a new e-commerce system. Now we need members who are in that area, if you have volunteered already, to actually take that to fruition. Right now, if you renew your membership or join online, a form gets printed out and somebody punches it into a machine. He's here in the room, but I embarrass him by saying who he is. But, you know, it should be an e-commerce site, so it's all done automatically. Let's get the internet working for us. There is actually a 25th anniversary book in production at the moment. Ted Alsner writes the magazine. He's actually based in the USA most of the time. He is actually putting together a best of Astronomy Ireland for our 25th anniversary. So we've got till August the 1st at least to do it. It'll probably be an e-book that you can buy online. Our administrative systems. If you're interested in helping out at even the lowest level, we need a lot more help on our paperwork, on answering the phones, on processing all the memberships that come in, on our publicity, contacting the media, dealing with the media. There's a huge amount of office work that goes on behind the scenes, and if you see something successful happening, usually 10 other the work of 10 times that has been done trying to find out how to do things, or investigating, you know, what venues are available, what speakers are available. We have 12 major speakers a year. We write to 300 people every year to get those 12, and they have to be chased up, and then eventually they have to be serviced, as in flights booked, accommodation, all that kind of thing. So there's a huge amount of background administration that goes on in Astronomy Ireland, and it keeps us very busy. We are all volunteers. I'm a volunteer for Astronomy Ireland since day one. I haven't been paid a penny for doing the administration work of Astronomy Ireland, and don't want a penny for doing the administration work of Astronomy Ireland. And there are lots of other people like me. Seamus in particular back there has been our membership secretary for over a decade and does incredible work every week. And there are lots of other people like him, and there have been in the past that have come and gone. And I am just so sincerely grateful to them all, because they've made Astronomy Ireland the big organisation and successful organisation that it is today. Our public lectures, we want to expand these with a few extra special talks during the 25th anniversary. Now, Stephen Hawking wasn't apparently giving public talks, but I was at an event last year where he gave 2. And there is a bit of a way around it, apparently. So we may be in talks with them, and we do know one of his students, after all. Also, Brian Cox now charges a large fee, we're told, but I have his mobile number, and we can always see what can be done there. And even if he does have to be paid a large fee, he is very popular these days, and that'll have to just be factored into the ticket price. And it could be a very good fundraising event for the Society. There are lots of other speakers like that. Commander Chris Hadfield, we haven't directly approached him yet. One of the members is in touch with him though. He is due to pay us a visit to our offices. And if you're one of the volunteers, you'll probably get to meet him, but it won't be a public event the first time. But there are lots of speakers like that. We know that when we get a talk about some aspect of cosmology, the country goes crazy for it. People are really interested in the Big Bang and the universe and where it came from. When I was in Tenerife, which has a relatively small population, the Stephen Hawking talk was given in an auditorium. I can't remember how many it seated, 5,000 to 10,000 people. It looked as big as the Sydney Opera House to me, and it was sold out on a small island in the Caribbean, or not Caribbean, the Atlantic Ocean. So, you know, there are certain speakers who, 1, can be a fundraiser for our club, 2, will increase the interest in astronomy enormously. It's something we should be doing, but we're going to obviously need a team of people to pull something like that off. Campaigns we could run. We did start something on light pollution, but we didn't have enough members to run it in the past. But it's still an issue in Ireland, and something that, you know, we can do. And the great thing about it is this: we don't sell it to the public authorities on the basis of astronomy. We explain to them, you're going to save tens of millions of euro. The approximate bill for lighting Ireland is about 100 million euros a year, and 30% of that goes up into the air to light up, as somebody said, the underbellies of jumbo jets and seagulls. And that's 30 million euros we could do something better with. They could donate, they could give it to Astronomy Ireland. Heck, we'd do the whole, help them, you know, just for 10% of that, and that would fund us for a very long time to come. So it's good for the environment, it's good for the budget of the country, and it's certainly good for astronomy. Down the line, if the society is being well run, we will need to hire staff. We've got some very good people. We've hired over 100 people in the past 25 years. They've come and gone, of course, so we have quite some skills in that. So if we did have a budget for it today, we would be hiring people, but we mostly need volunteers. And then I think we get close to the end now. There are some members who have been involved in funding proposals for other organisations who tell us that we would be eligible for grants where there are EU budgets in the region of €7 billion per year. We don't need much of that 7 billion to make a big difference for Astronomy Ireland. Those funding procedures will take over a year, so that's a long-term thing, but there are two members in particular we're talking to who have experience in this area, have got funding in the past, and they want to do it for Astronomy Ireland. So maybe long-term, down the road, over the next 25 years, we could see some of that funding coming online. And that funding was always around, even during the recession. I can tell you more about that if you're interested in that kind of ideas. We should be seeking sponsors for some of our events. They generate great publicity. Sponsors will be interested in that. That's why all of your sporting events are funded by commercial companies. It's a small item about more online competitions, like the recent Outer Surface event, which got a phenomenal response. The movie, as we held last year, competitions were also had hundreds of people writing in. So there's lots more events like that we could do. So that's a bit about what Astronomy Ireland has done over the past 25 years, where it sort of is now, looking for more volunteers. I know about half a dozen people have seriously come online in the last few months. That may tell you a little bit about what the Society has done in the past, and also what it could do in the future. And so it may just be that we're all out, sweeping the floor of the warehouse before the crowd arrives for the March the 3rd Jupiter watch. And the important thing to remember is that down the line, some of those young kids that are at those events could end up as students of future Stephen Hawking's. He'll probably be retired by the time they grow up. And you can have fun looking through the telescopes, enjoying the hobby, but also knowing that astronomy has another dimension of it, and the dimension we want to take it, if we do make it 10 times bigger in the next 25 years, which I think is very doable, is that it's a power and a force of good in Ireland which has a science-based economy. That's where I'm going to leave it, because you could talk all day about all the plans of Astronomy Ireland. Other people are emailing in lots of ideas. There's several times this audience of other volunteers around the country that want to help the Society. That would make sense if there's 3 times the membership outside the country. A lot of people couldn't make it tonight. They had other events on. We have a list of volunteers that help to do something in Astronomy Ireland, even if it's only bring the telescope to a Starbecue once a year. And there's 150 people on that particular list. And of the 23,000 people on our email list, we hope to inspire a lot more of them to get involved in astronomy in Ireland. So I hope that tells you a bit about where we're coming from. And anyone who's watching in on video, that this helps to explain a bit about where Astronomy Ireland is coming from. And I won't have to spend several hours explaining to everybody one by one, and we'll be able to get on with doing all this administration. So if you want to help us and you have any ideas, grab one of these forms here, a pen there, give us your name, address. If you have any particular skills, we're looking for people who are ordinary people that are happy just to hand out leaflets at events, who can work in the office, who can work from home, calling up the media. We have a couple of people who want to do that already. Or maybe you have professional skills, you're in the IT business. We have big problems with our email list, thanks to spam filters and all that kind of thing. We need to do a lot with our website. We have certain IT requirements within the office. We don't have an official treasurer at the moment. Our last treasurer left us, and we're sort of just coasting along with a couple of helpers, generating lots of paperwork that one day will need to be analysed. We're not formally registered as a charity. You all know the shenanigans that went on with the charities, was it just over a year ago? And how the charity law in Ireland is a mess. We took professional advice on it. In fact, our next speaker, Brian Harvey, is an expert in the sector of charity. He's been a long-term member of Astronomy Ireland, and before we formed Astronomy Ireland, we sat down with Brian and he advised us on what the charity sector is professionally like in Ireland. There was no charity law, was the basic answer. There's an 1879 Act called the MacNaughton Act. There's a proposal to bring in lots of charity legislation, that kind of thing, a bit like what they have in the UK. It seems to be stalled. I haven't been keeping too close contact on it recently, but we will need to, you can register with the Revenue Commissioners and get tax exempt status, which is great if you're making profit. Astronomy is non-profit. It doesn't have the profit at the moment, so we're not of any great interest to the powers that be yet. But if we're going to get grants and we want to run the organisation professionally, we will need properly produced accounts, which we haven't had for a few years. They can be produced, backdated. We had one member who did volunteer to do all this going back 6 years. So if you're an accountant or you have any office or bookkeeping experience, we need that as well. So IT, bookkeeping. We have legal needs, we have insurance needs. Anything involved in running a small business, Astronomy On can be considered as one of those. And volunteer work on top of that. So if you've got any skills, or you know anyone who wants to help, they don't have to be a member of Astronomy Ireland, we'll take help from anywhere. We've got a lot of programs we'd like to get going. Please fill out one of the forms. The next proposal that we're going to do is to start holding meetings of groups that are going to start doing things like promoting the eclipse watch. Probably on a Monday evening, maybe every 2 weeks. Come up and see me afterwards if that's the kind of thing you could get involved in. You don't have to sit on our national committee. You could sit on one of our subcommittees. You could just be somebody who helps out doing a project from home. Anything you can think of that I even haven't thought of, we'll almost certainly be interested in it as long as it helps promote interest in astronomy. So if you're interested in any of that, grab one of those sheets, fill it out, hand it to me, email us. office@astronomy.ie is the simplest email address to get to us. And I'll leave it at that, because hopefully it's still clear. And we promised you a view of Jupiter, because we wanted to mix some of all this hard work and astronomy in with a bit of real astronomy. Jupiter's out there at the moment. That comet Lovejoy is still quite bright. I was looking at it over the weekend from Dublin, and so we hope to be able to find that for you as well. So thanks very much for all your attention. Thanks for coming. Grab one of the forms, fill out your name, and we'll see you all again.